And now it's time for The Catch, which takes you around the Great Lakes to hear from reporters about the issues they're covering.
Here in the Great Lakes region, we know all about gray winter skies, but according to Bridge, Michigan reporter Kelly House, this winter has been especially cloudy.
So in the first 8 days of 2023, a Grand Rapids National Weather Service monitoring station registered 5 minutes of total sunlight. And that's out of thousands of minutes of potential over those days.
And while Great Lakes winters are known to be cloudy, Kelly says that the beginning of 2023 was an outlier, even by Michigan standards. The reason? Climate change.
Our winters are getting warmer, and that can lead to drearier, muddier, experiences when we're used to having crisp skies and snow by this time of year. The reason for that has to do with the lake effect. So many Michiganders know the reason we can get some intense storms in the middle of winter is because of air sweeping over the Great Lakes before they really freeze and picking up moisture from the water. So as our winters get warmer, the lakes are slower to freeze, and that means that the potential for clouds and storms is higher.
Of course, the lake effect is felt in many areas south and east of a Great Lake, most famously Buffalo, where lake effect snow contributed to a deadly blizzard in the final days of 2022. Kelly says that the trend toward warmer winters changes the lake effect, leading to strong winds sweeping over the open waters, picking up more moisture, which then creates persistent cloud cover. This can wreak havoc on the people living in this region during the winter months.
It turns out there's actually a name for that, seasonal affective disorder, which is a real thing. I talked with a researcher who told me the reason that happens has to do with receptors in our brains that are activated when sunlight touches our eyes. And of course, in the winter, when you have these cloudy skies and the angle of the sun is different, you're not getting as much of that. So your brain isn't sending signals to boost your serotonin rate.
As far as what the future holds for Great Lakes winter cloud cover, it's likely to continue, but won't necessarily get worse.
Scientists were pretty clear that yes, lake effect is going to increase over time, meaning a greater chance of those cloud layers and storms happening. That doesn't necessarily mean we will have more cloudy days, in part because we already have so many.
Icy roads are a fact of life for drivers in the Great Lakes region, which is why salt is commonly used to de-ice the pavement. But the use of road salt can be bad for waterways. As part of the Great Lakes News Collaborative project called Refresh, Circle of Blue reporter Brett Walton recently investigated the environmental impact of all that salt on roads in Michigan and beyond.
It's the increasing salinity of freshwater that researchers and officials are concerned about. It can harm insects and mussels and freshwater fish. It can loosen pollutants that are already bound up in sediment and send them downstream, where they can influence things like harmful algal blooms, which are already a problem in some of the lakes, especially Lake Erie.
Salt can also damage infrastructure, making concrete and metal deteriorate faster than they would otherwise. That's especially true in urban areas where there's lots of pavement. One way to curb these negative consequences? Salt smarter.
That can be achieved in a number of ways. One is education, better training. It can also be achieved by changing equipment and changing techniques for salting. So salting trucks are now going slower down the road and pre-wetting the salt.
These techniques aim to keep more salt on the pavement where it's needed, instead of letting it bounce and scatter off the road, wasting it. And the results are measurable. The County Road Association says that decades ago, 500 pounds of salt per lane mile were used to de-ice highways. Today, that figure has been cut in half.
Bottom line is that to address the salt problem, you have to use less of it. And that means a change in practices and also a change in expectations about what roads look like in the winter.
A new study shows concerning levels of PFAS in fish harvested from rivers and lakes across the United States, including the Great Lakes. Milwaukee Journal Sentinel reporter Laura Schulte has the details.
A group of researchers from the Environmental Working Group and Duke University got together and they analyzed a lot of data that was available from federal agencies regarding PFAS in fish tissue harvested from freshwater lakes, streams across the country.
PFAS is an acronym for a family of chemical compounds that have been widely used for decades in waterproof and stain-resistant products and foam used to fight aircraft fires.
And these chemicals are an issue specifically for humans because they bioaccumulate in our body over time. And the chemicals have been linked to types of kidney and testicular cancers, lower birth weights, harm to immune and reproductive systems, altered hormone regulation, altered thyroid hormones, as well as high blood pressure.
The researchers analyzed hundreds of fish fillets collected by the EPA between 2013 and 2015. Fish with PFAS were found in all 48 contiguous states, and PFAS levels in wild-caught fish were substantially higher than those in commercially raised fish.
Consuming fish, once a month, 12 times a year, can increase, the amount of PFAS that are accumulating within your body as you take those fish in. And this is really important to know about because we, have always looked at PFAS and drinking water being the largest risk to human consumption with these chemicals. But now we're finding that it is accumulating in our food and therefore, accumulating in our body.
All of the 152 fish harvested from the Great Lakes had detectable levels of PFAS. And one salmon harvested from Lake Michigan near Milwaukee in 2010 showed 19,000 parts per trillion of the chemical PFOS. To give some perspective, the EPA released guidance that humans shouldn't consume more than 0.02 parts per trillion of the chemical compounds.
For communities with strong ties to fishing, this is going to have a huge effect. This is going to limit the amount of times a year that they can consume the fish, that they rely on for sustenance.
At Great Lakes Now, we aim to cover the Great Lakes region and the people who live here, like you. Please follow us on social media, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and sign up for our newsletter at greatlakesnow.org.